Kimiya Factory serves as the president executive director of Black Freedom Factory, an organization that encourages what is that noise? That scared me. All right. That encourages data-driven activism, hashtag redefining professionalism for BIPOC, LGBTQIA plus communities, youth, and dismantling racial inequity across the state of Texas. While co-founding the movement hashtag change rape culture, Factory challenges Title IX policies regarding structural violence and sexual misconduct at institutions across San Antonio, Texas. She is a recurring political commentator for South by Southwest, CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, all the mother alphabets, and the griot, and has been featured in the New York Times as well as local Texas news media. Please welcome to the stage. She's slaying tonight. Make noise for Kimiya Factory, the activist.
Hello, San Antonio, Texas. How are we feeling tonight? My name is Kimiya Factory. I am so humbled to be here to be recognized by PechaKucha SA. But tonight when I was thinking about my presentation for PechaKucha, only one word came to my mind, and that is community. I can only stand here as an activist because of the lives that constantly pour back into my cup in this community. Tonight's presentation is a compilation of photos captured by community with different yet the same lens, and that lens is liberation. I would like to thank Oscar Moreno, Sophia Zuani, Tori Sledge, Kenny Holston, and Dominique Beltran for continuing a movement that has a long way to go. We cannot begin to recap the fruits of democracy without acknowledging the indigenous people who planted the seeds. Every sparkling river and waving tree in occupied San Antonio are sacred to the Yanawana and the Kapuli who keep the traditions alive and protect me every step of the way on my journey towards liberation. Tonight we will go back to June of 2020. I will tell the story of a 21-year-old girl with nothing to lose, tapped on her shoulder by the ancestors who said, "Tag, you're it. It's time to carry the flaming baton of change for Black, Indigenous, and Brown futures through a flaming path of injustice and oppression." 9 minutes and 29 seconds. The nation watched as George Floyd begged for his life for almost an entire 10 minutes. I screamed at my phone, begging the officer with their knee on Floyd's neck to get off. I begged my community for salvation, for solidarity, to march alongside me on a hot day in July. Thousands marched through the streets of the Alamo City, staring armed police in the eye, hands up, pleading for them not to shoot. American citizens screamed in agony from tear gas as we exercised our freedom to assemble. You see, this moment in 2020 wasn't just about George Floyd being murdered at the hands of police. This was the breaking point of following the murders of Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery, Charles Roundtree, Marquise Jones, Damian Daniels, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, the Freedom Riders, Marsha P. Johnson, and countless others. We had nothing to lose and everything to gain as we kneeled for 9 minutes and 29 seconds in front of the Travis Park Plaza. We held our truths to be self-evident as we chanted to one another, recognizing democracy over and over again by looking at each other's faces. With blisters on my feet from marching and a hoarse throat from screaming, I can only ever hear the echo of Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, "As we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back." Dr. King's dream told him that we are not satisfied and we will not be satisfied until the justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I will not be satisfied until immigration is a priority in this country, until parents don't have to wonder if sending their children to school will result in a mass shooting, until the youth have the power to choose their identity and have bodily autonomy. I stand here at the crossroads of the Afro-Latinidad to hear the sweet promise of En Lakesh. I am you. You are me. You are my other me. If I do harm to you, I do harm to myself. If I love and protect you, I love and protect myself. Tu lucha es mi lucha. La comunidad. La comunidad. Sí se puede. A year ago, the power of the youth stopped me from my spiral into despair when myself, Laura, and Made decided that it was time to have healing circles in the socioeconomically segregated hoods of San Antonio. What one calls the hood, so many call home. Alongside Laura and Made, the spirit of rage that I had found a few years back was quelled by the youth who had so much wisdom to give. The sparkle in the eye of Amaris as she talks about coding, or the gentle smile from Carlos on his hardest days humbles me. It heals me. The youth are the future. Charisma breaks her back to make sure that her family understands and accepts the sacrifice of the Afro-Latinidad and how we have to unite within the diaspora and the intersections of all of our identities. When I think of San Antonio, I think of fearless small business owners who put up a fight against gentrification in this city, who call out how construction delays their business. I think about individuals who work hard on the week to be able to dance a little bit on the weekends. I think of an East Side that's comprised of Black cowboys, historic churches, and soul food that gives you the itis. But overall, when I see San Antonio, I think of home. Home to my story on a journey to find the mountaintop of love, prosperity, rest, and freedom. I love you, San Antonio. Thank you for guiding me towards the sunlit path of love, peace, and liberation. The power of the youth is extraordinary, but the power should not rely solely as them. As we reflect on 2020, we must also ask ourselves, what has changed? Since the beginning of 2023, there have been 146 mass shootings in this country. Texas leads this country in some of the most oppressive legislation in history. Our autonomy to choose what happens to our bodies, who we love, and who we are all under attack. This is a call to action, to love your neighbor, to reevaluate democracy. Thank you, San Antonio. Thank you to the people of the Yanaguana and the Gapuli. Thank you to the future of Black, Indigenous, Latinidad. Thank you to the allies who sit here in this community and raise their fists with us in 2020 because they understood that their future is our future. We have everything to fight. We have everything to live for. But more importantly, we also have everything to lose. Thank you.
Yeah, Kimiya Factory. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful call and response that you shared with us. Can you tell us where that call and response comes from, or when you learned it?
Yes, so in Lakesh, I was taught by Made and Laura, who are culture bearers of the Gapuli, and we teach that with Circles in the Hood, because if you do not respect your neighbor, you do not love your neighbor, and that's everything that we have to give.
Woo. It's so hard for me to figure out what questions to ask you because I got a lot of questions, but I want to say there's some people out here, and I remember one time I was speaking and I was like, it's time out for guilt. It was a Good Friday. I was speaking at a church and everyone in the audience was Caucasian just about. And I was like, it's time out for guilt. We don't need guilt. We need to have some tough conversations. So if there are people in the audience who you feel like maybe are sitting in places of privilege, what are some tough conversations they can have with their family members? Because obviously some of their families, we can't reach them. They're not trying to hear anything that we as Black women are trying to say. What's a conversation they can have that's maybe a tough one?
I think we can start at healing. Healing and therapy is seen as this kumbaya when really it's painful. Healing is painful and breaking generational trauma is actual work. So starting at a conversation about healing at every holiday, at every dinner table can really make the difference for our future.
That is powerful. And if you frame it that way, so we're not necessarily focusing on the negative, it's focusing on the outcome and the healing effect of what it can do when you start doing that tough work. That's great. Let's see. This is a tough question. When is the moment where you felt, and it requires a little vulnerability if you want to share, a moment where you felt brave and afraid at the same time?
The day that I marched for George Floyd, I had no clue what fight that I was continuing, but to see thousands, hundreds and thousands of people show up for the same thing that was also the same thing, if that makes any sense, it changed my life forever.
It was so scary because we were still trying to figure out what the heck COVID-19 was. And we were like, I got to stay safe, but I got to march. Like the power of the coming together outweighed all of the dangers that we thought we would face. And I remember because I was like, oh God, do I march? How do I mask? How do we prepare for that? And then people were looking to you to give them answers. And you're like, I'm not the who, Anthony Fauci, where you at? Like you can't answer those questions. You're just like, I got to do the best I can. So I want to commend you for that work because it was super tough and it just snowballed. It was like, then January 6th happened. Then, murder hornets. It was always something, right? But I want to say this because I want everyone out there to know how they can find you. How can they find you? How can they support? How can they give to your initiatives?
Yes, so you can give by voting. Early voting starts on April 24th here in Bexar County. May 6th is election day. Your voice matters. Your voice counts. You can find me at blackfreedomfactory.org. You can also find me at Kimiya_Denise on any social media platform. But more importantly, you can find me in community because that's where I love to be.
In these streets. She's not for the streets, but she's in these streets.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yes.
Y'all give a hand to Kimiya Factory.